Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 37th biannual, 37th regularly scheduled, back in our comfortable Monday night blanket, 37th Dads and Ed. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the live version. If you're watching late, listening to the audio, great. Glad you can join us. My name is Josh Allen, host of the show. Pleased, as always, to be joined. I should probably finish. We're a little flabbergasted tonight. If you're watching live, you notice there's two of us, not three of us.
Right. Yeah.
The third one has tried multiple times to get on, but we can't hear him. So we're going to see how that goes. Josh Allen, three wonderful kids who are not feeling well. A beautiful wife who, thank goodness, can take care of them, and I can still function at work during the day. Glad to be here. And glad to be joined by at least one of the co-hosts for the evening.
Claire, do you want to do the introduction?
Sure.
All right, give it a go.
I didn't know if Claire was actually introducing or if she was just standing there awkwardly over your shoulder wondering what was going on.
It's kind of what my life is. Constantly awkwardly over my shoulder, but
you have. Oh, I was about to say you have to play the background noises now because Brent isn't here.
There he is.
He is. But I'm Claire. This is my dad, of course. I was about to say I have two sisters. I have one sister. I have two dogs and an annoying bird.
Oh.
There you go. And apparently, my name is Devin Schoening. I'm the K-12 Instructional Technology Program Lead in Council Bluffs Schools in Council Bluffs, Iowa. My wonderful Claire, who's 9. Gracie is 11. She's on a walk with her mom outside on a gorgeous night. So my wife, Erin, will surely be listening later when she listens to the podcast. So, all's well here. I see Brent. I haven't heard him yet. Let's see what happens. Drum roll, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just in time.
Hey, you know what? When in doubt, you know what you got to do, friends, is you got to go to restart. That's Tech 101. Brent Catlett here from Independence, Missouri in the Kansas City metropolitan area, home of the Royals, who currently sit in first place. And I have 5 amazing kids and a terrific wife who's extremely supportive. I don't say that enough about how great she is. And super excited for our guest tonight, Mr. Chamberlain.
Absolutely. And it is great to have you back, Brent. We did not throw you under the bus. We just said that you would show up when you showed up.
Right.
Okay.
If you're not sure
I'll
about
check
that,
the podcast later.
Speaking of which, if you were in Brent's case, you could either go to dadsanded.podbean.com to listen to it after the fact, or subscribe in iTunes just by searching Dads and Ed and click on the subscribe button. Feel free to tweet at us. You can tweet at us tonight at Dads and Ed. Use the hashtag Dads and Ed at any time, and we do our best to get back to it. You know, we like to have fun during the week with that account. Apparently, we blocked someone last week. I have no idea how that happened. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one of the three of us that has it saved somewhere, and I have no idea. So, whatever.
That was well done, because we were having a conversation with them. Like, yeah, we don't know. Josh is the only one. So it's the nice thing is we can totally throw you under the bus for that, because I don't have the password. Do you, Brent?
No, I don't. I used to, but no longer.
You used to have it?
I did. I actually used to have, I was like toggling between a couple accounts, and then somewhere along the line I took it off and let Josh take that over.
I'm not sure if I should be offended or not. I don't think I was ever given the password.
Yes, I just double-checked. It's on our note sheet at the very bottom.
Oh, okay.
If you're ever curious.
Okay. I am.
I'll add it. You know what? As of tonight, after tonight, I'll add it back onto my phone and help out with the blockage of Facebook followers.
We might have to block a lot of people after having Will on tonight. We'll see.
True. It could get very controversial very quickly.
We might have to really monitor that thing tonight after we with Will's conversation. So, who knows?
So, we might apologize for blocking people. Maybe you deserved it, maybe not. But if we haven't blocked you, feel free to follow us at Dads and Ed. Our water cooler tonight, the topic is being brought to you by Devin Schoening. Devin, what would you like to talk about tonight?
Well, no, I was just curious if you guys had seen. We haven't been on since. I don't think we've been on since that. What is it? The OECD report came out where it talked about essentially that using technology has made no difference in pupils' results, does not improve pupils' results. I was curious if you guys had seen that and what you thought of that. Especially just some of the pieces from that report.
I actually have not seen that report, so I apologize for not having seen it. But the topic is interesting to me because just my own evolution of where I'm at in this game. And, I think back to Ed Camp Omaha, Devin, and some of our great conversations there. And I went to Ed Camp Springfield Saturday, had a great time. I led three sessions and really dug into some of those topics again. And I just struggle with, all these districts that are putting in a lot of technology and spending lots of money, and really, truly, are we getting, kind of anything from it? So I personally think that perhaps a lot of districts that have stuff, yeah, they have it, but they're not necessarily getting results from, and perhaps it's a need or a change, though, not so much that they're not getting results, but the structure of what we're looking for, say, in schools, and I'm gonna use testing as my scapegoat here. We're focused on the test and the results of that data versus the results of what tech integration maybe is doing, if that makes sense. I don't know if I articulated that right, though.
Well, I think that was going to lead to my question: is what are we? And I think I read a follow-up post that referenced this, but what are we using to measure success? Like Brent said, I don't know that, people who have thought through it really ever said that technology was going to improve test scores per se, but there's a lot of other anecdotal things that come along with it as far as the creation, and you would like to think that students, because they're more engaged, would improve test scores because they're more engaged with the content, therefore they would know more of it. But I don't know.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, think about all the people that you work with or that you've worked with in districts over time, and whether they truly believe it or not, a lot of success of schools and districts they're based on some sort of result, some sort of measurable result, quantifiable result. In this OECD report, I think they were talking about PISA scores, and I know that we would be looking at Iowa assessment scores, and all those things about whether or not it's making a difference. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think the three of us would agree that maybe it's not about that, but maybe we wouldn't. Maybe there'd be some disagreement there. But I think I was thinking about a principal that I'm working with right now that brought that question up as we were talking about utilizing social media to kind of tell the story of her school, and the purposes for a principal specifically using a Twitter or an Instagram or some other social media tools. And her question back, and a very thoughtful question, I appreciated it, really was the why are we doing this? How is this going to impact student achievement? And she even put in there, or does it? Should we even look at student achievement there? And I kind of said, no, you wouldn't, And so I think it goes with that. And then I pulled out, there were two sentences, I'll just read them to you from one of the articles I read from the report. And I think it highlights the problem with instructional technology. So the first sentence says, these are back-to-back sentences. First one says, but Mr. Schleicher says the findings of the report should not be used as an excuse not to use technology, but as a spur to finding more effective approach. So I read that and I was like, oh, that's right. We should be looking at better ways to use it. The very next sentence he says, he gave the example of a digital textbook which can be updated as an example of how online technology could be better than traditional methods. And so the whole thing was yeah, let's use it differently. And then his example was, let's make better textbooks that can be updated on the fly. So for me, that perfectly kind of articulated this problem with instructional technology, and the way that lots of people see it is still in that realm of, hey, we can do this, we can do a lot of better things, like a textbook. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that textbooks can be highly improved with the technology, but there
Agreed.
has to be more to it than that. The digital textbook, if it's done right, there's, interactivity with it. It's not just a PDF. You're
Agreed.
watching videos and listening to audio and what have you. But if that's the only reason you're getting it, that's I think where my problem comes in.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me because, so, Devin, let's go back and I say, what if we were to hit the Powerball and dream up our own school?
Yeah.
So then what would that evaluation look like, right? I don't think it would look like what currently stands, at least not in my school. So, I don't know. So that's the interesting piece to me, though. I think the dilemma, if you will, that I'm having right now as I continue to soak on this topic within the places and things that I've visited and speak and all this different stuff is just that I'm not sure there's a connect with that aspect of the evaluation process. It's kind of like we want to show that we're doing this, but yet at the same time that's not really the most important thing to most district leadership.
No, it's not. I would agree that it's not what's most important to district leadership, because I don't think if I were evaluating how instructional technology is being used in a school or a district, I would be looking at very conceptual ideas that would have very little to do with quantifiable data. It would be, are my kids having opportunities to connect with others and to collaborate with others and to publish their work and to get authentic feedback? And I don't know that that's quantifiable beyond saying, yeah, they had those opportunities. I think it's much more qualitative. It's much more anecdotal, and that's hard because it's all about telling stories as opposed to providing easy to identify numbers. So I don't know that there's an answer, and I don't know if that's a perfect way to do it. But I think that's how I would do it. I would totally be sharing the things happening and the opportunities that kids would have that if we didn't have that technology in their hands and in the hands of teachers, wouldn't be happening, period.
Mm-hmm.
But and we've talked about this in the past. You should see if you have, I agree, it shouldn't be the only way, but you should still see improvement in test scores, I feel like. And I'm not saying that is the crux of whether or not you purchase technology.
Yeah.
But if you're utilizing the technology and you're using it to its full advantage, kids should be more engaged, and kids should be seeing increases in scores. I mean, I don't think it's dramatic, and putting technology in a school is not going to automatically increase your scores. You have to utilize it. But I guess I wouldn't fully dismiss test scores as a way to evaluate technology. I think it's a small piece, by all means, but I think it's still a piece.
And I think I've always believed that same thing. I've always believed that if kids were engaged more, and if that the test scores would take care of themselves, right? That you don't have to teach necessarily test prep or teach to tests,
right.
But that some of that would take care of itself. That was always my belief. I'm not so sure anymore. I don't know. I kind of waffle back and forth on that. I'm not sure that will be a direct correlation to having kids be more engaged, especially if what they're more engaged in is more project-based and real life and kind of where they're creating and making. I'm not sure those skills correlate directly to doing better on a test. But I agree. That was always my thought too, is that those things there would be some correlation there.
I think it all comes back to instruction.
Absolutely.
Technology is not going to be the answer in every classroom, but
right.
Utilize the tools that you have.
Did you get a new microphone there, Josh?
I did. It's not necessarily new, but I did kind of upgrade. I was listening to the last time's show, and I just wasn't pleased. You guys sound a lot better than I do, and partly it's because you guys are smarter than I am, but the other part was that just my microphone wasn't cutting it. So I'm hoping this increases my IQ a little bit. They say if you look nicer, people think you're smarter. Hopefully having the snowball mic will make me sound smarter. I don't think it's working on that level, but
so far, I mean, I'm impressed. But I might have to ask for one of those for Christmas, or my birthday's coming up in October. So
I was thinking the same thing. It does look really cool.
Yeah, No, very.
I love them.
Like you look a lot cooler.
Very much more host-like.
Good friend of mine who I used to work with got a grant from NIDA, and he had like the whole like spit shield, and he had this like circle that went around it. I don't even know what it was for, but it looked really cool. So yeah, Snowball Mike, I love them.
Huh.
They have a couple higher end ones, but I've heard that they're not worth the upgrade. So stick with the Snowball.
Got to give Bill Little a shout out, who's listening in tonight. He's had Golf League and other variety of other items. I work with Bill, and glad he's able to tune in tonight for Dad's and Ed.
Welcome, Bill. All right, Dad moment of the week. My kids, I kind of hinted at the top of the show, we had our 2-year-old last week and our 5 or 7-year-old this week. Massive headaches, which result in puking. I have seen more puke in the last week than I care to see. It has not been a pleasant time around the house. My wife and I were just talking about it before we went on. The worst part is, like, we can't do anything either because they're young enough they need help throwing up and all of this. And so we have had towels. We just got a brand new couch a couple weeks ago. So we've got, or I guess it's been June now, but we've got towels all over that thing so that they can lay and watch TV. It's been a rough couple of days. So hoping that we're almost done with number 2 and just waiting patiently for number 3 to come down with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
No.
Now I'm getting feedback.
We hear it too.
I don't hear it.
Huh. Devin, go ahead.
Okay. I'll try and make mine quick. My dad moment of the week is really maybe like an anti-dad moment of the week, but I sent a tweet a week or so ago to with voicing some frustrations about school for my kids. Knowing I tried to be very, very cognizant of what I was sending and how I was sending it with context and with clarity, and it didn't come off maybe the way I thought it would, and probably for the first time maybe ever on Twitter. I think I usually don't. I'm usually pretty bland in terms of not putting things out there that are too controversial, but got me in a little hot water, and it kind of reminded me a little bit about how I need to be careful with what I'm saying, and not only what I'm saying, but how it's said, with context and with clarity always, because I do have to, I work with the people that where my daughters go to school, and while it wasn't intended to be pointed at a person, it probably came off that way. And so having kids in schools, especially the schools where you work, can be a little tough. So my again anti-dad moment of the week was a stupid thing that I said on Twitter that got taken the wrong way, I think. So that's my anti-dad moment of the week.
Interesting. So it ain't me.
It's got to be you.
Well, what am I? All right, I'll bounce out here with Bill.
What's happening?
Wonderful.
He's gone.
All right.
And then there were 2.
Devin, you're gonna have to do the interview yourself.
You got feedback now too? All right. Well, welcome, Will. It's me and you, I guess. It's you and I for a while until these 2 yahoos can figure out what the heck they're doing.
Hey, that works out. That's where I can talk.
Probably better. It's probably better that way, to be honest. But I'm going to give them a second.
I'm going to try. I'm getting feedback.
Okay.
That's the what.
Well, and then there was one.
You're the only one that's not hearing it.
Maybe it's me.
I don't know. All right, keep this open. This is great.
Will just left, and now it was just me, and now I'm just gonna have a conversation with myself and see what we can do.
All right, is that any better? I don't know.
I'm beginning to think it's 7.
Let me sign out, and I'll come back in. How about that?
All right.
Okay. See you later.
Okay.
Wow. Amazing.
See, it's always him. I'm throwing him out under the bus on this. It's not. I knew it wasn't mine.
All right. Let's move on. First off, Bill Little, proud dad moment of the week. He just posted the hashtag Dads at Ed. First catch from cast to stringer. Nice little fish there. Well done. William, we're glad to have you here. In spite of the rhetoric that's gone back and forth between our two camps, we're just glad to have you here. Ignore the technical difficulties. It's pretty much a routine night for us. Introduce yourself to the anyone who happens to be still watching or listening on the podcast.
All right, I'm William Chamberlain. I teach social studies in junior high setting at in southwest Missouri at a little town called Knoll, Missouri, where we have a chicken processing plant which brings in a lot of English as a second language students. So we have a very multicultural school, and so my perspective, having grown in that school, to working in it now has really changed in regards to a lot of things. I like to ask hard questions and make fun of people. So that's kind of my deal.
That's kind of your MO. You know what I've always appreciated. I would love to know, how do you do it so fast? Like, you have to be the most quick-witted, fastest tweeter that in my network out of the many thousands of people that I follow.
I get daily practice at school. You know, the teachers that say that you should never be sarcastic around your students because they won't appreciate it, they don't teach junior high kids. Junior high kids like sarcasm. That's their language. That's what they speak, and I happen to be extremely good at it, which probably means I never actually progressed any farther than a junior high mentality.
I would beg to differ on that. Speaking of your classroom, Dean Shresky wrote a post / kind of a podcast that he does sometimes tied with his post about your live feed you have in your classroom. And I know you've done that for a lot of years. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's maybe any of its impact that it's had? And I know there's the one story of connecting with another country, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about how that's impacted your classroom.
That's an interesting thing. I had to quit doing that a couple of years ago because our school bandwidth was so poor. But we are probably pretty close to being able to start that up again. And it just started as a lark. I thought it sounded like something that would be cool to do. I didn't have any educational purpose behind it other than letting people see what's going on in a regular ed classroom. The idea that classrooms have to be cut off. I mean, we have metal detectors in buildings now. We have entrances that go through the office, and you're basically locked down until you get beeped in or out. And I just feel like the public part of public education is becoming less public. And so I just thought it'd be kind of cool if people could see what we're doing in a classroom and to kind of take some of the mystery out of what's going on. And yeah, we've made some connections that way. We've had people watch from all over the world. I think one of the things that strikes most people who aren't from the United States or from Southwest Missouri is how similar students are around the world. That's one of the things I've noticed through my interactions with classrooms around the world is kids are kids. They have similar interests in music. They have similar interests in clothing. It's And for me, that's a very powerful thing, because that really led me to the idea that really the real power of technology and education is this ability to connect students together. Very little that we do online or on a computer is something that we can't do with paper in a classroom. And the one thing that we can't do is connect people from outside our local communities.
That's a good point. Well, we were chatting a little bit about that, I think, start when we were talking about that OECD report that came out a while ago about the purpose of technology, or that it's not impacting student achievement, essentially. And we were talking about how would we evaluate, or how do you know if technology is being used for a real purpose in schools? And that connection piece maybe hits on that, but how would you think about evaluating that if you were going to see if a school was doing that really well, knowing that a lot of what we do on the computer we could do on paper? How would you evaluate a school or district that's doing that well?
Well, they'd have to have some kind of online presence, and not just where they're broadcasting, but also where they're having conversations. Honestly, I don't think that the most important things that happen in education are things that we evaluate anyway. A content area test is not going to evaluate what's really important in a classroom. All it does is evaluate whether they have specific content knowledge, which may or may not be important. We can talk about the lack of critical thinking about curriculum as well. I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about. I question the validity of any study that bases their belief system on any kind of test to begin with. And the problem with education is it's a long game. It's not a short game. It's not a what have we done in 9 months. It's when they're 30 or when they're 40 or when they're 50. Are former students in places where they can make choices for themselves, or are they stuck with what they have to do? To me, the purpose of education is to raise up kids who are happy as adults. And I think the way we evaluate that happiness is, can they change what they're doing without significant loss of income, without loss of housing and things like that? Can they follow their interest without being shackled by a poor education or a certificate that doesn't qualify them to do anything more than what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit earlier about just the connectedness that you value with your students, and obviously not something that you can measure necessarily, like you said, in a test format. You've been very instrumental in getting kids blogging and getting kids, more importantly, to have those conversations in a blogging area by using Twitter and the hashtag comments for kids. And I know you've talked about this a lot. We've had you, Devin and I invited you a couple times to do some other stuff, and we always ask you about it because it is, I think, an important thing and an important perspective to have. So tell us, if you would, a little bit about comments for kids and, kind of where that's at now. It's been going on a few years, and, where do you see it going from here?
Comments for Kids was started because I was having trouble getting people to come to my student blog posts and leave comments. And I knew the power of the stranger coming in and thinking that what you're doing is important enough to leave a comment on. And so I was complaining on Twitter, and one of my friends said, "Why don't you do something about it?" And I said, "Oh, okay, what should I do?" And hashtags were pretty new at the time. And so she said, "Come up with a hashtag." So came up with a hashtag, started using it, spent a couple years really pushing it, and now I don't really have to do much with it. It's kind of taken on a life of its own. I started a blog where I had a lot of information about commenting, and set up a way for people to come and leave their URL for their student blogs and things like that. But I noticed after a few years that people weren't really using that. They were using the hashtag more. It's more convenient. The other thing that I really noticed was that people were making connections, and so they were connecting their classrooms. And I think that's really really what got me thinking about how our students need this opportunity to find networks of their own. One of the things that we've all done on Twitter is find people that we can talk to that's not local, that's not in our local community, that we may never have been able to create a connection with. And we have students in our classrooms, all of us do, that have interests that are not mainstream interests. I would dare say every student has at least one interest that's not shared in the classroom by other students, or even in the school. And through social media, through blogging, through Facebook, through Twitter, Instagram, they're finding people that have those same interests, and they're building their own network. When teachers talk about a personal learning network, we often kind of narrow it down to we're learning about teaching and learning. But the reality is the most powerful part of a network is finding those pockets of interest that you share that's maybe not what you do 60-65% of the time. It's the people that are very interested in that thing that you're interested in besides what you do. And I would really like to see our kids be able to move towards that. And the funny thing is, they don't need us for that. It's good that we give them that opportunity in class, but I can tell you from personal experience with my own daughters, they find people that are like them using social media without any help from us. If they have the tools, they have the time, they will create their own networks. Now, the network may not be educationally something that a teacher would look at and say, that's a really valuable network for you, because our view of education is really very shallow, and unfortunately it's based around the curriculum that we teach too often. So I don't think that necessarily most kids need that opportunity in school, but I think it's a good way to model for them, and I think it's a good way for them to maybe have that light bulb moment before they get older, that they can start doing this even earlier than they might ordinarily.
So that was going to be my quick follow-up real quick, Brent, before.
Sure, yeah.
That was going to be my follow-up, Will, and maybe it could be a quick one because I think you answered it maybe a little bit there. Do you think that whole idea of students finding these networks of people who with whom they can learn and just kind of hang out, associate with, do you see that being embraced by schools, or do you think it doesn't necessarily need to be, which is I think maybe what you kind of alluded to at the end there, that doesn't have to be a school thing, that might be just a personal thing that we need to help them navigate?
I think the scope of school is really different than the interest of most people, students, adults included. School is basically set up to teach specific content that society deems as important. The fact that other people or that our students don't deem it that important is pretty obvious. Because most of what we talk about is how do we get authentic learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can get authentic learning is by providing experiences that the kids want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're providing experiences over things that they're not interested in, you can't be authentic with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids are finding their authenticness outside of the classroom. If schools embrace that, I can see it going really one of two ways. I can see the students pushing back because that's their space.
Yep.
Or I can see a transformational situation where kids can be less encumbered by what society deems as important for them, and give them the opportunity to make some choices about what's important to them. Now we have to be careful. We still have to teach them some important things, and I think school is one of those things where we teach a specific content, and that culturally ties us together.
Right.
So I believe that what we're doing is okay. I just think we need to do a little less of it, and we need to be a little more careful about what we choose to teach. For example, most high schools require 3 or 4 years of math, and most of them would prefer it be algebra or higher. And the reality is, and math teachers, you can hate me all you want, the reality is we don't use algebra and higher in our daily lives unless we have specific jobs where that is required. And my argument would be, if they're interested in doing those jobs, they're going to learn that math. They're going to be taking those classes because they're thinking it's important for what they want to do.
Right.
If we think about all the things that make people successful that aren't taught in schools, we don't have time to do that. Society doesn't deem that as being something as important as learning the quote-unquote curriculum. And yet we still find people very successfully learning how to do those things outside of school. My idea for the perfect school would be half the day working on things that society deems to be important. The other half working with students to help them learn what they're interested in. Make it more authentic. And the authenticity has to come from the student. It can't be coming from us. Yeah. In fact, I think that our major role at that level would be as a resource guide, as a strategic partner. There's a little business speak for you. A strategic partner, even though we might not be that particularly interested in what they're doing, because we have an outside perspective and we have a grown-up perspective, we might be able to lead them or push them in the right direction. And because we have networks, we are able to connect them with people. That's very powerful. In the future, I see teachers as being connectors between students and other people that have knowledge that they're interested in learning.
Well, I want to just go back to comments for a kids bill for one moment, if I may, not to dwell on that, but I just want to thank you for that innovation, because I know I've promoted that for years now, and it's such a dynamic tool for kids to get that audience, to get the authentic audience that they can't necessarily get otherwise. And so I've been a part of seeing young men that hated writing, and once I could draw them an audience, suddenly they love to write or blog and then continue to write. So tremendous amount of success with that. There's so many pieces of what you say that I'm always intrigued to listen. When I got to see you down in the Ozarks at the conference down there a little while back, like I love to listen to you talk about where your take is, and the authentic piece is really striking me tonight with the idea of us embracing that, right? So I'm going to come at an angle kind of like I heard when I was at a conference in Iowa this summer about a teacher mentioned to me how they were using Snapchat to connect with the kids in the realm of giving this assignment, and kind of just the directions of the assignment. At the same time, I just posted an article on my Facebook page about Snapchat being one of the 10 worst apps parents should be paying attention to. So it's kind of interesting, when you look at, depending on what lens you're looking through, whether or not one is bad or good for you or whatever. But I think from that piece where, like, that's where kids are, do you think that's important for us to be meeting them where they are?
Kids need places of their own. They need their own room at their house. They need their own space in the classroom. They need their own social space that they can feel safe in without having the intrusion of educators. I think one of the things that we forget is we spend so much time with these kids throughout the day. If my daughter wasn't in my class, I would be spending more time with other people's kids than I would with my own. And so we become perhaps overly friendly, and we want to become more part of their lives outside of school than we are. And there's appropriate ways to do that, like going to their ball games and things like that. But I think every time we move a step into their private realm, which for me and my friends when we were growing up was in a car or was at a friend's house when their parents were away. If my dad would have showed up and wanted to hang out with us, that would not have been cool. So when we start showing up in those spaces, what do? They go somewhere else. They find a new space. Twitter, for example, Twitter is just not that big among teenagers and early 20s people because we're there, and they don't want to hang out with us all the time. They don't mind hanging out with us some of the time. They don't want us to be there all the time. And you know what? I can appreciate that. I can still remember what it was like when you are at home and you have authority figures over you at home, and you have them at school, and at church if you go to church. Those precious moments where you can find an hour or two a day, or a day a week where you can spend away from that authority figure. I think that's part of that growing up process that all kids need. So if the teacher's finding success doing that with Snapchat, that's fine. She just needs to know that they're no longer using Snapchat the way they were with her watching them, and they're using something else.
Those are great points. Hey, speaking of kids, we want to switch gears a little bit. You mentioned you're in Southwest Missouri, not far from the Arkansas border, and we know that you've been known to maybe call the hogs every now and then, although not necessarily in public, unless you're with 60,000 of your other friends. Arkansas this weekend, they've had a rough couple weeks there, William. Would you like to maybe chat about Brett Bielema, and/or maybe you want to talk about Cliff Kingsbury? Anything you want to chat about there?
It's been a couple rough years in football. We had some expectations because of the way we finished at the end of last year, and I was talking to I don't remember who I was talking to about this, a teacher at school, and I think that what the Razorbacks football team really lacks right now is a vocal, kind of jerky leader on that defense. The offense hasn't been as much of a problem as the defense has. They've just been allowing too many yards, too little time of possession for the offense, things like that. I think they really need somebody they need somebody with an attitude, a little bit of swagger, and I think they don't have that right now on defense, and I think that's really affecting them. Also, they've had a lot of injuries. When it comes to mouthy coaches like Bielema, I actually appreciate that. I want somebody representing my team to have a little swagger to them. The unfortunate side to that, of course, is you take shots when you're not winning. You take shots when you are winning, but you take worse shots when you're losing.
Yeah.
And you know, it's all fair. Bielema has and his wife have been known to take shots, so it's only fair. And I think that's what's great about college. First of all, every game counts. When we lost 2 weeks ago, it was like absolute devastation. And the Chiefs lost Thursday night in a horrible, horrible ending of the game. And yet, I still have a lot of hope for the Chiefs because one loss is not going to make a difference. And that's what's great about college football. Every game matters so much, and it's being played by kids that are 17 to 22, 23 years old. And as much as it means to the adults who basically in Northwest Arkansas live and die with Arkansas football, the kids still have a life to live after that. So we have to temper our disappointments with the fact that these are kids, and we just have to be willing to take the bad with the good, and not be like I don't know, those fans that Kansas City had show up over the last year or so that weren't there before. You know, some of us old school fans that were there through the thick and thin, most thin, really, really thin. And now the Royals are the big deal because they're the new winners in town.
Well, we've pointed out on the show. Well, I wouldn't say we've pointed out. Brent's pointed out that since he's moved to town, things have been looking up for the Royals.
Absolutely.
We don't know if we haven't done any studies on that. We don't know if the government will pay us to do a study on that correlation. I don't know what test scores we would use. I suppose record. I mean, that's an easy one, but.
Well, we could also just, usher him out the city limits and see what happens.
Get him a job on the Kansas side of the river and see where that goes.
Yeah. We'll move him to St. Louis and see if they can get out of the first round this year.
Hey, we one thing we always like to ask the people we have on, since they are all parents, most of them have been dads, and we've had a few moms, is looking at the impact that kind of both ways. So, what impact being a parent has had on us as educators, and what impact kind of being an educator has had on us as parents, because the two tend to intersect in many ways. And I think that the perspective is much different, maybe on both parenting and teaching, when you're doing both. So if you can maybe talk a little bit about that intersection, how each has impacted the other for you.
It's a difficult question. I've been a teacher for 22 years now, and I've been a parent for 24. I was having an argument with daughter number 2 about the age of daughter number 1. And so I was a parent before I became a teacher, but it was so long ago. It's really hard. And it was interesting because I was the primary care person for our first daughter. I worked nights. My wife worked days. So I would go to school in the morning. She would go to daycare for a couple hours. When I was out of school, I'd pick her up, and I'd spend pretty much the rest of the day with her until it was time for my wife to come home from work, and then I would go off to work. So I spent more time with her than anybody, and I remember those as pretty good times. But I think having kids has made me want to care about my students more. And I think that seeing the way my students live and the situations that some of them have been in make me appreciate my kids more too. So I think they're mutually benefited through my experiences with both of them. I will say though, my sympathy and empathy gene I think got left out of me. And I've talked about this before on Twitter. I have a real difficult time with empathy. It's hard enough with sympathy because I have those experiences that I can share, and so I can kind of sort of feel when what somebody else is feeling if I've gone through a similar experience. But when it comes to empathy, I am empathy challenged, and even though I may not be able to feel what they're feeling, I have learned sometimes through through, and I'm talking about family members and everybody. I'm not just talking about kids. I have learned that most of the time people just want to talk and they want somebody to listen, and I think that's been a really valuable lesson for me. So even though I can't really feel what they're feeling, or I can't project that I'm feeling what they're feeling, and it's still a real struggle for me, it's something that I think has been beneficial because I have kids and because of my relationship with kids at school. So they're in effect making me a better person because I have a lot of deficits.
Well, we appreciate you sharing those deficits with us tonight. We give you a hard time, but we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your insights. Like they both said, I echo that the times I get to sit and learn from you are fantastic because you always bring a perspective that I hadn't thought of yet, and so we do appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
We are going to. We've got a couple other things to finish up with tonight. Can you stick around for that?
You bet.
All right. Feel free to chime in at any time with any comments you have. So, Brent, you are up first with the Apper side of the week.
Okay, so this is interesting. On Twitter the other day, I got hit up from a gentleman out of Texas saying, "Hey, Kat, can you approve the people in the Connected Classrooms workshop in Google+. So it's a Google+ community that I once upon a time kind of collaborated with some friends at Google on when I started my Edu Hangout site. And I remember when that launched, like the number of members in that community just skyrocketed because, of course, Google had it listed in every place known to man, and when it first launched, and my, small little site that I had gotten going in community was, meant to connect classrooms and all that sort of stuff. So long story short, I ended up kind of connecting with them on it and getting rolling. And their idea was around virtual field trips through using Google Hangouts like we are, and using Google Hangout Live in particular. And so classes could come in and then they could watch these recorded versions of it. And so they pulled off the project, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago or so, the folks at Google had on the project from the standpoint of scheduling the virtual field trips. But then there were still over 10,000 people in there communicating to each other and connecting and all that good stuff. And it's always been one of my go-to favorites to share with teachers, or myself personally if I wanted to connect with a classroom for somebody. And so anyway, I get this tweet the other day, just last week, during the week, on, I want to say like Thursday. And so I said, yeah, I can approve people. So I go in to look to see how many are waiting for approval, and it's like 10,000 and something. And so I'm like, okay. And I honestly, I felt obligated, believe me or not. I sat and clicked through 10,000 over the weekend. It took me all weekend to do it. And some of it's spam, and some of it are, you don't know if they're legit. And so for sake of the integrity of that community, I didn't want to just hit approve all, which was an option. But I was like, if I do that, then that's just going to cause more problems in the long run, and I don't want this thing. So I did. I sat there and got kind of sucked into it as I'm trying to do doctorate homework and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But I kept thinking, like, this is important, for this newcomer to this community. And so sure enough, I did that, and literally there have been over, I think now pushing close to 200 new posts in the community, just because of all the new people, quote unquote, that have been approved. And so it's kind of fun to be able to help that happen, And so anyway, if you look up in Google+, Connected Classrooms Workshop, it's a fantastic Google+ community that, really is a great place to make connections happen for your classroom.
Well done. Devin, up next.
Let's
yeah,
see.
Hold on. William, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, I want to hear this one.
You too.
Okay, so let me start out by saying I'm really against treating students like animals, and I'm not really into ringing a bell so I can watch them slobber over a piece of frozen pizza that they serve at our cafeteria. But the application that I am recommending is Class Dojo. But I'm not recommending it in the way that a lot of people use it. I see lots of my students who have behaviors that are so part of who they are that they don't even notice those behaviors. And a lot of these behaviors are really negative in a classroom setting. But they don't. If you talk to them about it, they don't even realize they're doing it. And I'm not talking about little things like cracking knuckles or something. I'm talking about the kid that is constantly interrupting, or the kid that is constantly getting up and sharpening their pencil when we're trying to have a class discussion. Mm-hmm. They're not huge problems per se, but they are disruptive, and they really do get on some teachers' nerves, which can really cause a problem between them and the student later. So here's what I recommend. We're using Class Dojo this year. My assistant principal wants us to use it so he can track minor behaviors. He's got a project in the works for our seminar time, so that the students that are performing well and have good behavior can use that time for social time, while we can spend much better valuable time with the kids that really need it. And I'm all for that. I want the kids that need the help to have that without 2/3 of my class, having to sit still for 35 minutes and with nothing really to do, which causes all sorts of problems by itself. But what I recommend is
is if you have students that have their own smartphones, you can set up your class. You can work with your students to come up with the behaviors that they want to see, the positive behaviors, the behaviors that bother them as a group. The students can sign up. They can keep their phones in their pockets. When you observe behavior, you can mark it on your computer, your tablet, whatever you're carrying around. If they have notifications on and vibration on, they can get an immediate response. You don't have to use this to tell parents or administrators if you don't like. You can simply use this as something that the students can do to monitor their behavior with your help. If your students are a little older, you could even use this to help them self-moderate. They could set up their own class dojo just for themselves, and you can have them set up the behaviors that they would like to see change, and then they can self-monitor. At the end of every class, you would just say, okay, go into class dojo, mark up the things that you think you did well on, mark down the things that you think you needed work on. That'll give them a record of the things that they're doing well on, the things that they're doing poorly on. It's self-directed that way, and it can be very useful. A lot of us adults require accountability partners. So you could even set up a class dojo where one student monitors another student, and then they have those conversations. Somebody that they pick to have that that relationship with. So there's a lot of ways that you can use class dojo that's not the traditional way that most of us think about it when it's being talked about. It is a tool. The tool is only bad if it's used poorly. And I think there's a lot of benefits that could come from class dojo if it was used correctly. So how'd I do?
That was great. I was just going to say, for those of you that don't know, in Google Hangouts there is a group chat, and we use that group chat every time we're on. It really helps us, make sure we know who's up next, and kind of keep the show moving. So right as I had put in there, if William wants to join in, and we do this for all of our guests, you're welcome to pipe in. Well, William hadn't hit return yet on his computer, and so he didn't hit return until Devin started talking. When I saw Class Dojo come up, I wasn't quite sure if it was a joke or not, but I'm glad I'm glad to bring you in, and I'm glad you shared that with us. That was great.
Thanks. I think, and that's something I think that we need to be better able to do, is to take tools and we need to repurpose them to fit our needs.
Totally agree.
I think my Twitter bio just says EduPunk now. I changed it today. And in my opinion, an EduPunk is a person that is interested in education that makes tools work for them instead of working for the tools. A lot of that has to do with making your own stuff or repurposing other people's stuff. So I would say when you see tools and people are recommending tools, and you're thinking, and your immediate reaction, like often mine is, that's stupid. Think about it for a minute. How could you repurpose that tool and make it a useful or valuable tool? It's already there. Maybe you can't figure out a way. It's quite possible. There's plenty of tools on the internet. So
yeah,
that's just my opinion.
All right.
I like it.
Devin.
I'll do my quick Twitter follow. This episode is going to be our iTech, the Iowa Technology Education Consortium, sharing their account. It's an account that shares lots of great things around education and technology in the state of Iowa and beyond. And we'll be sharing all kinds of things over the next month leading up to the conference, the Fall Technology and Education Conference in Des Moines in October. We'll have Eric Scheniger and Ramsey there to keynote. So I will highlight, send that out. It's at itech_IA. It's a great account to follow, a great organization that shares a lot of useful stuff around the state of Iowa.
William, who's somebody that you follow that is good? Other than the three of us. I mean, that's a given. You don't have to mention us. Go ahead.
There's a lot of good people to follow, and the problem is, it depends on what you're looking for. So I hate to recommend any one because it may not meet everyone's expectations, but there's some great followers out there. Anyone that I'm conversing with is somebody worth following because if I'm talking to them and they're talking back to me, that's exactly what we're looking for in social media. So I would recommend follow me. So I recommend me, and then just see who I talk to. I don't waste time on people that don't talk back, and I talk to people that talk to me. So yeah, that's if we're having a conversation you're interested in, follow whoever I'm having that conversation with.
Nice, well done. I am going to give a shout out for I'm going to chat about a local event that's coming up. So we are starting a Rebel chapter. Rebel is an organization that works on changing definition of beauty and health. They are starting a chapter. They're actually based out of Kansas City. Brent, you should get to know them.
Okay.
They are starting a chapter at Lewis Central. They came and did a fundraiser last year, kind of an event last year, and it was very successful. So they are having a pro wrestling fundraiser in our high school next Saturday night. I am stoked to be sitting ringside for that event. I have not really watched wrestling. Devin just pointed out my Twitter account that I tweeted didn't work. I'll fix it in just a second. I have not watched pro wrestling since probably 98, 99, but I'm excited to take my son. I have no idea what he's going to think about it. We don't watch it really at all, but should be fun. So I'll retweet it from the Dad's Edit account. But if you're not doing anything Saturday night, tickets for $5 and $10 in advance, $10 for ringside, 15 and 20 the day of the show. So, Devin, I'll see you there.
I will be in South Bend, Indiana this week.
Oh, not too bad for you.
For a wrestling event. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the show. Oh, no, we haven't. I'm sorry. We need to do our district spotlights. So, again, this group chat thing that we have going on, just to put a brakes. No, I need to know what a splash zone is. Would that be like the sweaty zone that I'm going to be sitting in, unfortunately, on Saturday night?
Yeah, so I've actually been to a professional wrestling match at my high school when I was in high school. Very similar kind of thing. And you don't want to be sitting in the first 4 or 5 rows because they spit, they blow snot. It's quite disgusting. Quite disgusting. It's something that you enjoy watching other people get because you're like 10 rows back.
Good to know.
Josh, punch up.
Well, I wondered why I got the tickets for free. Maybe that's why. Oh, man. All right, we need to spotlight a few people from our district before we sign off. Devin, you're up first.
I'm just going to highlight or spotlight a few people I get to work with. I've said for a while that I really wish I had a team of folks to work with in my district, and kind of have that this year with 3 folks. Dave Fringer is our Chief Technology Officer. Kelly Dufek is a assistive tech and instructional tech person, and then Joe LeDuc, who is our digital learning specialist, who deals mostly with our learning management system and some other things. But it's kind of nice to have a few people that I'm able to have conversations with and who are pushing back on me sometimes. That's nice to have. So it's nice to have that team in place.
I am going to give a quick shout out to the Twitter account LC Math 8. Brett Weldon is one of our math teachers and does a phenomenal job of posting what's going on. He is very technology integrated. We see too often, we talked about this with the report, that technology is just kind of there and not necessarily being used, but he does a really good job of taking the resources and getting them to kids, and is really great at sharing some of that stuff that's going on. So Brent.
I'm going to go with a new high school teacher in our district at Van Horn High School, Ted Diepenbrock, excuse me. His Twitter account is at Ted Diepster, so it's TEDDIEPSTER. I just tweeted it to the Dads and Ed. I've been interacting with him quite a bit, actually via email and some stuff, and just planning and doing different things with him. We're going to work on some digital citizenship stuff together soon. But he sends me his lessons and kind of wants me to critique them, and just been really impressed with how open he is to that criticism and being willing to improve himself as an educator. And he's not brand new teacher, but he's new to our district, and so I've just really enjoyed getting to know him. So I wanted to shout him out, tell him to keep up the great work.
William, do you have anyone? I know other than yourself, is there anyone else that you want to point out, or do you just want to throw out yourself and for people at school?
I'd just like to do a shout out for my district staff. They are really making the turn and doing some interesting things, and I've been really proud of their attitude and their willingness to put students first. So, yeah, my district team, I think.
Good. All right. Well, we've come to the end of another wonderful chat. We are going to be back in 2 weeks, October 5th. Scott McLeod is going to be joining us. He is the director of Prairie Lakes AEA. That's not his exact title. I don't know. He works at Prairie Lakes AEA. Direct something. Show up in 2 weeks, and you'll see. William, again, thanks for the time. We really appreciate you having it on and all your insightfulness.
Hey, it's better than watching the Jets on Monday Night Football.
Hey, we're above something. Hooray! Look at us. We're moving up the ladder.
Probably have more people watching, too.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Night.